Hi, this is the Critical Introverts podcast. I'm your host, Senor Filth. You might know me by now. Flying solo today. Just kind of, I'm not sure how long this is going to be, but there's two main kind of articles or things that have happened that I think would be kind of interesting to go into. One is a Washington Post article, and the other is this interesting little exchange/debate thing that happened between Joy Reid and the Moms for Liberty co-founder about this whole kind of, book banning, trans kind of stuff. And so just interesting kind of things to kind of get into this week. So let's kind of get into the Washington Post article. It is really, really interesting, this whole thing. Let me do the share screen thing really quick. Here it is. Okay, so let's just go here. This is an article. It's doing your own research is a good way to end up being wrong. Now, how do we start this? There are some things that we have to kind of, before sort of look into or consider when we were kind of going through these kind of things. One is the word like misinformation, bad information, that kind of stuff, and truth is going to be kind of spewed out a lot. We have to look into think about like what the specifics are and what this is sort of generally like the message this is kind of putting out to people. I mean, if you just look at the title, doing your own research is a good way to end up being wrong. I mean, I the balls it takes to kind of have a kind of attitude like this is really something. But I mean, let's just kind of read it and look. You'll kind of notice sort of like vague accusations of like, what fake news is, or there's going to be this sort of I'm guessing like this attitude of we know what's truth and everyone else should just kind of listen to us and trust us. But maybe I'm wrong. I haven't really fully gone into this article yet, so let's just sort of kind of look into it. It's not that long, so let's just kind of read it as we kind of go along. Okay. The internet has been a boon, a huge boon. Shouldn't it be boom? Anyways, a huge boon for the accessibility of information. There are a few barriers to consuming classic literature or detailed scientific analysis or catalogs of news reports. There is also an exorbitant amount of garbage information, of course, and an entire universe of people who say stuff that think they will get people to click on links that will earn themselves money. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. There's always going to be just a flood of information, and some information is going to be completely wrong. Some information is going to be kind of sort of, I'll just say, like, it's speculatory, and they might have some pieces to the puzzle sort of right, but overall, things may trickle down, and it might just be a little bit off here and there. So yeah, and true, there's clickbait kind of things, which is why I kind of never trust, or I'm always very skeptical of, what do you call it, like big headline news. I mean, if you go down the list, like just the handling of things of like Jesse Smollett and what's you know, the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, all that kind of stuff. When there's a huge kind of almost like theatric kind of storied feel to it, you have to kind of be a little kind of little suspicious there. Let's continue. While confidence in American institutions has been in decline for some time, it's not hard to imagine how economic incentives of the internet contribute. I mean, yeah, sure. When you have, I mean, first of all, you have to think about this. Like, since the economy is sort of like crashing right now, people have less, you know, spending money. They have less income to sort of spend outside their kind of like the necessary things they need to buy: food, rent, bills, you know, stuff like that. A lot of people are canceling streaming services because, you know, they just can't afford it, and it's, you know, they rather pay my bill and, or just, you know, risk being late on that bill and having to continue, you know, my Disney Plus subscription or something like that. So when you think about that, and, you know, a lot of people just aren't, with that in mind, people just aren't, you know, into buying subscriptions to, like, especially like news media kind of things, news, you know, like Washington Post subscriptions, cable network subscriptions, like it's dying down. So I mean, that part is kind of, there's nothing wrong there. So let's kind of continue with this. There's an outsized appetite for derogatory, counterintuitive, or anti-institutional assessments of the world around us. I mean, yeah. I mean, people are attracted to things that are kind of outlandish, or they sort of go against what the, you know, the force-fed kind of narrative, or just that kind of funnel of that streaming information that people are always getting. That's always going to be kind of a thing, and especially that now, like the derogatory, counterintuitive, and I mean, yeah, I would even argue that, you know, the kind of anti-institutional kind of stuff, that's sort of just traditionally, that's kind of what journalism is kind of for. Like, it's supposed to kind of challenge the kind of institutions of anything. That's just what good journalism is. So I mean, yeah, I guess that's kind of true, but the way this is kind of framing it is a little weird. You have to think, when these kind of things pop up, you have to sort of consider how things are framed. You know what I mean? So let's just kind of continue, and I'll explain what I mean. Around the world. Okay. This is in part because alleged scandals are interesting, and in part because Americans like to view themselves as independent analysts of the world around us. Sure. you know, again, it depends on what the scandal is, and you know, things that are kind of out of the ordinary do sort of pop out to us. I mean, if I want to sort of be that guy, it's sort of why, you know, when there's certain stories of certain people that get killed by cops, a lot of people gravitate to those kind of stories, but the stories of the overwhelming amount of stories with a certain type of demographic of people shooting and killing people of that kind of same demographic, that and in comparative numbers happens way more than the police officer thing. You know what I mean? Like the average person just is going to be more, you know, more attracted to those kind of, those out of the ordinary things. So let's continue. The result is that there is both a supply and demand for nonsense or appealingly framed errors. Americans who have a little trust in the system can easily find something to reinforce their skepticism. They often do. See, this is sort of when the kind of like the butthurtness starts to kind of eke in. Again, you know, what type of nonsense are we talking about? And framed errors, okay. Once a story breaks out, let's say so-and-so slept with so-and-so, there's always going to be these kind of, you know, these allegations as to what happens, and it's a kind of whirlwind. So to kind of like, it's almost framing this as if having those sort of jump to conclusion allegations should be left to professionals. It seems kind of, I would say, elitist. So yeah, this is just kind of, that's where this is going. Let's see. Okay, so this month, Neiman Labs, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Josh Benton reported on research released last year that showed how people, quote, doing their own research on the internet often led to them gain more confidence in untrue information. The paper, titled Online Research Evaluate Misinformation Can Increase Its Perceived Veracity, was written by research by the University of Florida, New York University, Stanford, and the conclusions were straightforward. I think, let's go to this just for let's kind of read the first like little chunk of this just to see again if there is like a kind of elitist kind of attitude that's kind of portrayed on this. Asking people to do research on fake news stories makes them seem more believable, not less. Again, you know, framing it like the fake news thing, it like, what is the fake news? You have to be a little bit more specific. Maybe they get into that in this, but okay. A new study asked thousands to evaluate the accuracy of news articles, both real and fake, by doing research online. But for many, heading to Google led them further from the truth, not closer. Well, okay. Sometimes there's going to be just a whirlwind of bad information, and or just a whirlwind of like the algorithm kind of you know, vomiting kind of stuff that doesn't really link up to what you want. So that's just kind of a given, but whatever. Let's read more of this. Just again, just the first little chunk and skip ahead. Maybe they talk about the study. When it comes to digital spreaders of information, social media platforms typically get the brunt of the blame. After all, they're the places that black box algorithms, the propagandist bots, and the partisan screamers on social media, we can watch the bad information spread in real time. Social media is, at least metaphorically, a passive experience, a place where the news finds you. Okay, all right. But what's the most enraging thing your uncle can say at Thanksgiving right after he tells you about the Rothschilds are behind an army of Colombians set to invade Idaho next week? I've done my research on this. In other words, I'm not just some guy who believes everything in the news feed. No, I put in the work, double checking everything. As Easy R 4-pound 2024 says about the protocol, I'm telling you, he's in onto something. It all fits. Okay. Well, all right. So this is kind of, again, beginning to frame the skeptic person as automatic, kind of frame the skeptic person in a very kind of negative light. I mean, is that even a thing? The Rothschilds are behind a Colombians army of Colombians? What the hell is he talking about? Okay, let's kind of skip down to maybe there's a little bit more information on the study. Okay, here it is. Okay, where do we go? Okay, the authors use SOTN as a shorthand for searching online to evaluate news. The basics of the study were similar. A group of internet users were given a variety of news articles, many of which had been false or misleading, by a group of 6 professional fact checkers. Yeah. And they were asked to read the articles, then shorthand, what is it? Searching online to evaluate news. To online searches. Okay. The individuals study the very methodology to tease out the strength of the effects they found. Okay, so this is one study. Study 1, 3,006 participants involved. Fresh articles, one published within previous 48 hours. Their newness makes it less likely that fact checkers and other outlets would have had the time to debunk anything. Again, like, what are these articles? What fresh articles are they? I don't know. Study 2, 4,242 participants also involved, just published articles, but participants were asked to evaluate them twice. Once just after reading it, and once after, I guess, sort of fact checking it, searching online to evaluate news. Their hearts out to pretty much research them out. If we assume that the respondents have a bias towards consistency, the authors write, this offers an even stronger test than one study, because to find a search effect, the respondents would have to change their previous evaluation. Okay, that's kind of weird. Study 3, 4,042 participants. Like, okay, like what demographics of these participants are you, like, where are they? Again, things you have to kind of ask is, who are the participants? You know, what kind of areas were they kind of pulled from? You know, certain areas within the country kind of usually think this way, and other areas usually think that way. And again, what are the articles that were kind of basing these things on? Anyways, study 3 was like study 2, but this time the articles to be evaluated were older, published 3 to 6 months ago. Over that time span, one would hope the internet's immune system would have had some time to kick in and seed those search results with accurate information. Okay. And study 4 was like study 2 with freshly published articles, but this time the articles were about but this time those stories were about highly salient topic, COVID-19. Study 4 was done in June 2020. Would people's online research products produce better outcomes if they were searching about something that's important to their lives, like an ongoing epidemic? And finally, study 5 was like study 1, but with a key technological difference. Participants were also asked to download a browser extension that would track their web surfing behavior. Before they went to the verdict, include URLs their Google searches produced online. Okay. Maybe there's more to this, but we'll kind of think we're kind of done. Wait, let's look into the results. Taken after the 5 studies provide consistent evidence that SOTIN, what does it stand for? Searching online to evaluate news, increased belief in information. During the point in time investigated, in our 5th study, which tested explanations for the mechanism underlining this effect, we found evidence suggesting that the exposure to lower quality information in search results is associated with a higher probability to believing misinformation, but exposure to high quality information is not. Well, I mean, again, what is the lower quality information? Like, what are they? What does that even really mean? Like, is it is it that, like, that's a very strange way to kind of put that. Lower quality information. Let's just, I guess let's let's take it for granted and say that this is what they mean is just information that is truer, I guess, or more fact checked. I don't know. This is really bizarre. That's kind of what they kind of go into. Low quality information versus high quality. Like, is it that the source itself is more presented in a more kind of like guerrilla style, or versus something that's a bit more kind of mainstream? It's a very odd way to kind of put that. Okay. There's probably another factor at play. One not measured in the research. People who believe false claims often do so because those claims, I think there should be comfort with their broader ideology and philosophy. Like a parent confronted with allegations of misbehavior by their child, those individuals would presumably be more likely to embrace dubious information supporting their belief than information that corroborates with their allegations. The study presented participants with news stories to evaluate without predisposition. In the real world, that usually doesn't happen. I mean, I think he's talking about more kind of, what's it called? Conscious bias. What's it called? Like something bias. I forget what the hell it's called. It slipped my head. I'm not really sure if that's really the case when it comes to news stories. I mean, if your philosophy is mostly about trying to piece out reality through as much truth as you can find, then I mean, I guess you can say that like confirms their way of thinking, but this is almost kind of framing it again. Let's just move on. Fuck it. Okay, see. This is when you kind of know something's kind of up with this kind of stuff, is when you kind of get into like the smearing. One of the ways the modern media environment has made it easier for false information to spread is that the information adopts the veneer of reliable information. Again, like, what information are we talking about? You know, sites like the Gateway Pundit, of course, look like news sites in broad strokes. Yeah, here we go. The Gateway, despite its history of propagating nonsense, is often treated as legit by people of prominence, so it claims treated as credible. See now, yeah, this is the weird thing. We're kind of getting into kind of smearing thing. Okay, of course we're gonna mention Alex Jones. And let's see. Okay, One American News, which obviously is pro-Trump. Its programming often appeared to be equivalent of taking Alex Jones's InfoWars, but say in a local television news studio. Doing your research might lead you to your reputable looking sources that they are anything but. I'm curious. Let's do a little let's do a little research. How did the Washington Post report this? Let's see. No, I'm not gonna do that. Anyways, I mean, fuck, man, just look at this guy. Let's look at the other headlines he has. Will Nika Haley take a month to read the write on the wall? Yeah, sure. What happens to a campaign headquarters? Is he referring to DeSantis as Jeb 2.0? Yes. I guess he is, yeah. So you can kind of see a little kind of a bit of a pattern with this guy. Okay, yeah. Here's kind of the big giveaway right here. Right there. QAnon. Whenever you can kind of just, whenever you hear the kind of buzzwords of QAnon and Jan 6 riot, the Jan 6 riot at the Capitol. Let's see, how does Washington Post report on this? Like, is there any mentions of the video footage that was leaked? Do you think there is anything on this? I don't think so. Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, but pretty much, you know, I would say to people just, you know, listening to this, fuck these people. Because there's this weird undercurrent to this of saying, like, just try not to improve your intelligence by doing your own research. That's what I'm kind of getting from the vibe I'm getting from this guy. And look, you know, I've been kind of getting into stoicism lately, and there's a general sort of theme to it, and that theme is something along the lines of like of coming to terms with the idea that you will never know everything, but not viewing that as a negative. View that as a way to sort of continue to grow as a thinker, as a person, you know, continue to question things, you know, be as humble as you can. Don't ever kind of stunt your growth in your own kind of mental growth. So yeah. And lastly, let's kind of get into let's get into this. This is an interesting thing. Moms for Liberty co-founder shuts down Joy Reid, who tries to make the case for why a book about pedophilia should be allowed in public schools. It's kind of, can we maximize it? Okay, it's not the best quality, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. I guess let's just kind of play and see what happens.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other moms for have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so
sure.
I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? Just, I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No, wait, we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm going to answer it.
Will she answer it? I'm gonna guess no, but let's kind of see what happens.
Okay.
Well, who is the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman.
Hold on. Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first name.
What's the name?
By his adult family member.
For students to read. An award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue isn't appropriate for students to read. What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult.
What's the name of the character? Is it All Boys Aren't Blue? Is that what it's called? Is that what she said? Okay, so yeah, George. Yeah, she's right on the money. The name of the guy is George. Good for her. Let's go back to this.
On dildo or the rape of a minor child on dildo are acceptable for public school? I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No,
wait,
we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Well, who is the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman.
Hold on.
I mean, she doesn't really have to be the expert of the book per se. Like, she doesn't have to. What do you call it? Like, no. Like, you can't just like test her. Like, oh, what did this character say in chapter 3, page 6? Expect like her criticism to just be invalid. It's a weird. That's a thing with like these kind of types of people that just annoy me. With their fucking stupid Lloyd Christmas fucking hairdo. There's this like, and I hate to make it this kind of religious kind of thing, but people like this, they're so used to having like their worldview just so confirmed in their head that any disagreement is constantly going to be kind of, it has to be sort of any disagreement, like, there's such adverse to disagreements, and their only response is, well, if you're not the absolute expert on this thing you're criticizing, then your criticism should not be kind of taken seriously. And that's again, that's such like a fucking like elitist douchey way to kind of treat the other side of anything. It just really just annoys the hell out of me. Let's go back a little bit.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman.
Hold on. Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first name.
Because you're giving me very specific information that is.
You're asking me to remember the name of an author.
You
the
just
name of the
remembered
author
very
doesn't.
specific names.
Joy.
Here's my
We're
question.
talking about
Here's my
strap.
question.
You didn't answer my question.
No. I'm going to answer.
And I doubt she will, but yeah. God, that fucking hair is just the worst. Holy shit. Man.
Great. I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm interviewing you and you're not interviewing me. So let's just make sure it's a conversation. Okay,
great.
So what I'm saying to you is that as you are not an expert in this book,
I don't have to be an expert to know that dildos aren't appropriate for public school. I mean, come on, let's get real.
This book is a full context story, as you said, of the author's experience. Why is it your right, or a Moms for Liberty activist's right, to say that a parent who wants their child to have access to this book, which gives a personal experience of this author, why doesn't a liberal parent, for instance, or a parent of an LGBTQ kid, why don't they have a right for their child to just have access to this book? Why is it your...
It's not necessarily about, like, the access thing is a weird, such a, like a bullshit thing to say. This woman the Moms for Liberty, they just don't want this shit taught in public school, like taught in the curriculum. They don't want, when English class, when, the syllabus comes for an English class in the fall, this book, they don't want this book to be taught for the months of February to March or something like that. That's what they're saying. It has nothing to do with banning the books, nothing to do with book burning. It's just, having it being forced and taught to public school kids. That's a reasonable thing. They're not saying to take it out of the library. I don't think they've mentioned anything about it not being in the libraries. So maybe she says it this.
You're right to say they can't.
So again, we're talking about incest, rape, and pedophilia.
And each parent, each parent has to decide what is appropriate for their child to read. So I want you to answer. I'm going to ask it one more time. What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story, why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means.
Yeah, that was thinking the same thing. Like, why would Joy ask that? Let's go back to that.
Why don't they have the? What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story? Why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member, they've experienced
and your proof of that is what?
You just said that if a child feels seen.
The proof is just what you what you said. Like, let's go back to what your question was. Like, she's mentioning that this book has, it talks about molestation and pedophilia, and your comment is this.
Your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story, why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member, they've experienced
and your proof of that is what?
You just said that.
What's your?
See, this is kind of this is why I think what worries me about this kind of the culture that we're in. Joy just, I would say the Joy types. God, that fucking hair. For people who always talk about like division this, division that, she's finding a way to never find any kind of common ground with her. Like, and this is, she's always choosing a method to be against what this woman is suggesting, and it's not extreme. She's saying, we as taxpayers don't want books with this kind of content to be under the curriculum of public schools because we are paying for it. It's a reasonable thing, It's a kind of the customer is always right kind of thing. God. Let's go back a little bit. Okay.
Proof of that is what?
You just said that
What's
if a
your
child
proof of
feels
that?
seen by this story.
What I'm saying, Joy, you're now making assumptions about it.
No, but if a child has been raped, we should do a lot better than put a book on the library
Now you're literally
shelf.
creating a story behind a child that you don't know. Let me show you a form. This is a form that can be obtained in Broward County, Florida. I'm going to show it to the audience, and then I'm going to show it to you. Okay. This is called the opt. Yeah, please. I'm going to hand it to you. So it's called the opt-out form.
Okay.
I really wish Tiffany Justice, her name. I really wish she would have just pulled the book out and just started reading it on air just to see what happens.
An opt-out form would allow any parent, because you said you are in favor of parental rights.
I am.
It would allow any parent to opt out of their child being able to take books out of the library without their parents' permission.
Okay.
So that Moms for Liberty, why not advocate that every school in America have an opt-out form so that a parent who doesn't want their child to access a book like All Boys Aren't Blue,
right,
that they can make that choice, because then each parent, including a liberal parent, a black parent, a parent who wants their child to read
God, I fucking hate that these people have sort of co-opted, like co-opted liberal. Like liberal is fucking dead as a term. It is not, like, there's nothing liberal about these people. And oh my God, I really just, that is one of the main things about this that just annoys me, is people using the liberal kind of the liberal title as some kind of like moral kind of proof of how moral they are, but like they don't know the first thing about liberalism, and it just really saddens me, because oh my God, like what the fuck happened to the left? Anyways, let's go.
Wants their child to read a book about African American history, then they get their
we want children to read books.
Why not just opt out for yourself rather than tell other parents what they can and cannot?
First of all, I think what you're talking about here is a wonderful step in the right direction. We should be having conversations about this. This is about local control. A lot of these decisions are made at the local school board level, and that's where these decisions should be made. And there should be vibrant conversations about what's happening in our public schools and what kids have access to. Joy, however, maybe we could just put all the books with all the graphic sexual content, the dildos, the rape, the
I'm sorry.
Let's do
I'm so sorry.
Let's do a back room. Let's put a curtain up in the library like they used to do.
One moment.
Stores. Remember when we were little and you would go to the video store?
The books that Moms for Liberty.
The books that Moms for Liberty. With pornography.
I know that I've seen.
We could just do that in the public library.
I have seen tapes of what Moms for Liberty does, and you all go into school board meetings and you read graphic stuff.
Disingenuous conversation.
No, it's not.
America used to understand that there's something called age-appropriate content.
Right, and here's my question again. Again, Ruby Bridges goes to.
Okay, that's kind of the video, but anyways, yeah, this is good for her, man. Good for, what's her name, Justice, Tiffany Justice. And I guess I'll just kind of pose this question. Actually, you know what? Let's, she said this perfectly, and what is this last part?
I'm sorry.
She talks about this. She fucking blitzed Joy Reid. Good for her.
However, maybe we could just put all the books with all the graphic sexual content, the dildos, the rape, the.
I'm sorry.
Let's do
I'm so sorry.
Let's do a back room. Let's put a curtain up in the library like they used to do.
One moment.
Stores. Remember when we were little and you would go to the video store?
The books that.
Good for her, man.
Moms for Liberty. The books that Moms for Liberty.
With pornography.
I know that I've seen.
We could just do that in the public library.
I have seen tapes of what Moms for Liberty does, and you all go into school board meetings and you read graphic stuff.
Disingenuous conversation.
No, it's not.
America used to understand that there's something called age-appropriate content.
Right, and here's my question again.
Joy Reid kind of actually comes. She kind of reminds me of what's the movie called? The Martin Short story, the Martin Short movie, I think it's called Stewart. Anybody remember that shit? Let's see. Is it called Stewart? Yeah, this fucking thing. I don't know why. What the hell is all this? Okay. Am I wrong here? Why the hell are all the pictures wrong? Oh, Clifford. Ah, that's the movie. I'm getting Clifford vibes from her. Anyways. I guess I'll just sort of start ending in here. But anyways, I'll just say this. This is something I think why I kind of just generally worry for, like, maybe the gay community as a whole, because of people like this, because of the Joy Reids, like in the 90s, 2000s, whatever, there was this emphasis on, you know, acceptance and stuff like that. But somewhere down the line, that acceptance turned into like an over protective kind of way of thinking. And it's like this kind of mothering, overprotective mother kind of shit. And it's really just fucked things up to the point, like, I can't imagine being someone who's gay and just, what's the book called? Not All Boys Are Blue or something like that. All Boys Aren't Blue. Like, being someone who's gay and then having, like, this shit be pushed out by, like, just mainstream, just culture in general. Like, this shit right here is representing you. But it's being represented by, like, virtue signaling douchebags like this bitch right here. It really just, like, what the fuck happened to the left? You know, and it's really kind of sad if you think about it. Because it's like, what happened to people's ability to say no to something? You know what I mean? And like having, you know, a sense of boundaries that we can all kind of agree on. Like, it's kind of, it's technically kind of bratty to me. It really is. It really, really is. But and another thing about this whole, like, the Joy Reids of the world and how they view, like, you know, the opponents of this kind of material in being in curriculums, and the worst part of it, and the bottom line, like, the worst part of it to me is, am I back on? Okay, yeah. The worst part of it to me is that it screams that parents don't matter, that it's an undermining of parents, and that's the worst part of it, and the thing that a lot of people seem to kind of, wait, let me fix, a lot of people sort of seem to kind of, okay, there it is. Okay, that's the thing that a lot of people seem to kind of overlook about all this stuff, is that they forget that parents matter. And instead it's like, you know, the sexuality and things like that, I don't know what the hell happened as far as this culture, like this parent culture of treating it as like, anything difficult like that, I'll just let other people take care of it. You know, I'm just here for the love. You know, I'm just here for the, you know, just support and love. All that bullshit. And it's like, yeah, you know, you're supposed to support and love, but also there is a reality of, like, you have to do the hard work as a parent. You know, I'm not a parent. I'm not, you know, whatever, but we've sort of what do you call it? We've turned into a society where like hard decisions, hard conversations should be left to people that should be qualified to have those kind of conversations. And like, I think that is a very dangerous route to go. It's a very manipulative route to go. Like, and it's so heartbreaking to see people like sell themselves short like that. But especially with this, like when I see parents just be so afraid to handle these kind of things and say, I'll let the state decide, I'll let The View tell me what to do, I'll let Joy Reid be the parent in this. It's like, fuck, man. Fuck. Anyways, I think I'll just kind of leave it at that. Actually, you know what? I'll end it with this, because this kind of, I think I maybe mentioned this before, and I'll say I'm not sure, but when I see this kind of stuff and this sort of the way the kind of Joy Reids of the world just aren't capable of finding middle ground with everyone else, it makes me think about when people bring up the subject of like a national divorce, and I had an epiphany maybe about a month or two ago when I was following this political commentator, and she was very far on the left, but I was just following her just to kind of see if there was anything missing, I guess you could say, or maybe there's something she can bring to the table that I didn't think about. And as I was kind of going through her page, I can kind of predict everything, every take that she was going to have on everything, and I eventually just deleted her from my feed, mainly because I was just so bored with what she had to say. And I think that's the thing that is going to realistically lead the what do you call it, the national divorce. I mean, whatever that kind of will look like in the end, I think that's going to be the driving factor, is that two sets of people are just, I don't think it's going to be a violent thing or anything like that. I think it's just going to be driven by just two sides of people are just not going to have anything to really talk about. Like, there's just, the reality to one person versus the reality of the other, they're just going to be so far apart from each other that there really is not going to be anything for them to really just kind of agree on, or just see eye to eye on. Like, they might agree on like superficial things, like, oh, that movie, yeah, that was good, or that steakhouse looks good, yeah. But things of like deeper kind of like philosophical kind of things, they're just going to be on two completely different wavelengths, and there's just not going to be anything for them to kind of really talk about. It's almost like a different language is developing amongst both sides of the equation. You know what I mean? Like one side is beginning to speak Cantonese and the other is speaking Mandarin or something like that. I don't know. I guess I'll just end it there. I mean, there's more things about the Joy Reid I can kind of get off my chest, but I guess I'll end with this kind of question. I generally don't think that people like Joy Reid, and just Joy Reid in general, the people like her, are smart enough to intentionally know what they're doing. So I would ask, like, what do you think is worse? Do you think it is worse if someone is intentionally doing what they're doing, like the Joy Reids, like if Joy Reid knew what she was doing, or if the Joy Reids in the world had no idea what they were doing, but they just, they just can't stop themselves because it's just in their kind of, it's their pattern, it's their DNA, it's the way they think, it's their kind of, their whole worldview, and their finances and the money they get from having the worldview, and their comfortable living is sort of like centered around them having this sort of cushy worldview. But like, is that worse than someone who knows what they're doing? I don't know. I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for sticking around. So yeah, that's the show. So yeah, like I've been saying for a while, trying to do my music show. I finally got the equipment to do it, so I'll do that. It's going to be like a kind of music selection type of stuff from the collection I have. A lot of funk, soul, some jazz, stuff from the late 60s to the 80s. Just be on the lookout for that. I'll post up the Instagram page for that show. It's going to be called Nothing Too Funky, and yeah, just be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys for watching. I'm your host, Senor Filth, and I'll see you guys another time. Peace.